All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down a really disturbing and incredibly complex theory about the Jeffrey Epstein network, and it's all drawn directly from our source material. Now, this goes way beyond the headlines you've probably seen. This is a theory that tries to connect global politics, high-stakes blackmail, and, well, something a whole lot stranger.
So this entire theory we're exploring today, it all really kicks off with one single glaring problem. It's a forensic question that, according to the source document, pretty much unravels the entire official story. And here it is, the central mystery that nobody seems to have a good answer for. How did this guy, a man with a surprisingly thin business portfolio, build a fortune that could compete with actual titans of industry? The source material we're looking at says, hey, if you actually do the math here, the numbers, they just don't add up. And this slide really lays out the massive disconnect. On one side, you have his known, verifiable income streams, which for a supposed billionaire were shockingly small. And on the other side, you have assets that require a constant, massive fire hose of cash just to maintain. The source material flat out calls this gap a mathematical impossibility. And this quote right here brings us to the absolute core thesis of the source material. It argues that Epstein's fortune wasn't profit. It wasn't something he earned. It was the operational budget for a huge, sophisticated intelligence operation. He wasn't the CEO. He was more like a highly funded manager of a very dark franchise. Okay, so if the money was a budget, what exactly was it paying for? Well, the source argues that all this infrastructure, the planes, the islands, was built to be the ultimate tool of control. The theory here is that Epstein's network perfected what's known in the spy world as an intelligence honeypot. It's a classic technique, really. The goal isn't just to get secrets, it's to create leverage. You get something on someone so powerful, so life-destroying, that you effectively own them from that moment on. But why go to all that trouble? Because, according to this theory, things like money or political beliefs, they're just not reliable. People's minds can be changed, and billionaires can always make more money. But if you have the video that will completely destroy someone's life, you have their loyalty forever. It's control based on pure, absolute fear. The source even gives this state a very specific, kind of strange name that it pulls from old Gnostic ideas, the Archonic Leash. The idea is, the second a powerful person was caught on tape, they were no longer a free agent. They became an asset, and they could be forced to vote a certain way, push a certain policy, whatever their new masters wanted, all to keep that leash from being pulled. So how did this global blackmail factory actually operate day to day? According to the source, it was a chillingly methodical, almost business-like process. It was basically a four-step playbook. Step 1. Scout for and acquire vulnerable people, often using legitimate-looking industries as a cover. Step 2, isolate them in a place with zero oversight, like a private island. Step 3, create and record the compromising event. And finally, Step 4, use that recording to establish permanent, unbreakable control. And this slide gets into the alleged procurement pipelines. The source document points directly to Epstein's deep connections to the modeling world, arguing that all the glamour was the perfect camouflage. It also highlights beauty pageant circuits as these environments where you have a lot of young, ambitious people who are heavily controlled by powerful gatekeepers. Okay, so up until now, this is a story of blackmail, power, and geopolitics, right? Well, this is where the theory we're examining takes a hard left turn. It moves beyond the stuff of spy novels and into something way more esoteric. The source argues that blackmail was only the secondary function of this whole network. And this question right here pivots the entire thing. I mean, think about it. If controlling politicians and billionaires was just a byproduct, what in the world could have been the primary objective? The source introduces this concept that's central to Gnostic beliefs, called Loosh. Now, stay with me here. It's described as a kind of metaphysical energy, an energy that's produced by intense human emotion. And within this bizarre framework, the most potent, most valuable kind of Loosh is said to come from absolute terror and suffering. So this is the really horrifying claim from the source material. It's that Epstein's island wasn't just a blackmail operation. It was a Loosh factory.
The targeting of children, it claims, was specifically by design because the absolute destruction of innocence was believed to generate the most powerful form of this energetic food for unseen parasitic entities. It's a truly monstrous idea.
So you have to be asking yourself, how could an operation of this supposed scale and this level of depravity even exist? Well, this is where the theory claims the entire blueprint has actually been hidden in plain sight, broadcast to all of us through pop culture. And this concept, revelation of the method, is absolutely key to the source's argument. The idea is that if the controllers show us exactly what they're doing, but they dress it up as fiction in a movie, and we all just watch it and say, wow, what a crazy film, they believe they've gained a kind of subconscious consent from us. It's basically confession through entertainment. And the source provides a list of some pretty startling examples. I mean, it points to Monsters, Inc. as a literal schematic for a Loosh farm that powers a world by harvesting the screams of children. It claims Eyes Wide Shut is a window into the occult rituals of the elite, and it even says some very recent films are basically direct retellings of the Epstein Island operation itself. The analysis gets even more specific and, frankly, more chilling with the horror movie The Black Phone. It claims the villain is a direct stand-in for Epstein, but the source then points to the premise of the film's sequel, where the killer comes back after death as an even stronger non-physical entity as a direct message to us that people like Epstein aren't punished by death, they're promoted. So, if this whole thing was a protected operation, how does the theory explain how it all came crashing down? Well, the source's conclusion is that it wasn't a failure at all. It was a calculated purge. And this timeline really lays out the two key events. First, you have that 2008 sweetheart deal, which the source calls proof positive that the state was protecting its own operation. Then you have his death in 2019, where a whole series of impossible security failures just happened to occur right as he's becoming a massive liability to the network. And this is the final damning indictment from the source material. It reframes Epstein's death not as a failure of the system, but as a feature of the system. It was a deliberate act of self-preservation, like a lizard dropping its own tail to get away. The asset was sacrificed to protect the much larger structure. And that, right there, is the final provocative question that the source leaves us all with. If Epstein was just one operational node, and the network he served is still fully intact, then that entire system of control and blackmail he supposedly managed is still out there, hiding in the shadows, its power totally undiminished.